Captain Jake Morrison stood at the large window of the Earth defense ship Valiant. His hands pressed against the cold metal frame as he watched the view outside. Space looked different today. Instead of the usual empty black dotted with distant stars, dozens of alien ships filled the area around Earth. Each vessel was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their strange shapes and glowing lights made them look like floating cities rather than ships. Jake had been waiting for this moment his entire career, first contact with alien life. The day humanity would finally meet their neighbors in the galaxy. He had imagined it would be exciting, maybe even wonderful. He never thought it would feel like this. His stomach twisted with worry as more alien ships appeared from nowhere, materializing out of thin air like ghosts becoming solid. Commander Lisa Harper walked up beside him. Her face was pale and tight with stress. "Sir, we're getting readings from 47 different ship designs. Some of these vessels are over 10 miles long. Our entire fleet combined wouldn't match the firepower of just one of them." Jake nodded but kept looking out at the alien armada. "Any word from Earth Command?" "President Williams is in emergency session with the world leaders. They want us to maintain our position but avoid any aggressive actions." Lisa paused and looked at the ships outside. "Sir, what do you think they want?" Before Jake could answer, every screen on the bridge lit up at once. A strange humming sound filled the air, and then the image appeared. The alien that looked back at them was unlike anything from Earth's movies or books. Her skin looked like living crystal, shifting between blue and purple colors. Her eyes were large and completely black with no visible pupils. When she moved, light seemed to dance across her surface. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet from your star," the alien said. Her voice was clear but cold, like speaking to someone she considered beneath her notice. "I am Ambassador Zexthara of the Vorthan Empire. I speak for the Galactic Council, the governing body of civilized space." Jake stepped forward toward the main screen. "Ambassador, I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. On behalf of humanity, we welcome you to our solar system. We've hoped for this day for generations." The alien's expression didn't change. If anything, she looked more bored than before. "Captain Morrison, we have not come here for welcome ceremonies or friendship treaties. We have come to deliver an assessment." "An assessment?" Jake asked. "The Galactic Council monitors all developing species throughout the galaxy. When a civilization reaches certain technological markers, we evaluate them for possible inclusion. In galactic society," Zexthara's image flickered as she accessed some kind of data display. "Your species has recently achieved faster-than-light communication and has begun exploring beyond your home planet. This triggered our evaluation protocols." Lisa moved closer to Jake. "Sir, this sounds like good news." But Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Something about the ambassador's tone made him think this wouldn't end well. Zexthara continued speaking. "Over the past 6 months, the Council has studied your species extensively. We have observed your technology, your social structures, your military capabilities, and your biological characteristics. We have also examined your history and cultural development patterns." More alien faces appeared on screens around the bridge. Each one looked completely different from the others, but they all shared the same expression of disappointment that Jake saw on Zexthara's face. "The Kelthani representative will present our findings regarding your technological development," Zexthara announced. A new alien appeared on the screen. This one looked more like a giant insect, with multiple arms and compound eyes that sparkled like diamonds. When it spoke, its voice buzzed like a swarm of bees. "Humans achieved fire control approximately 1 million years after most civilized species. Your faster-than-light communication systems are primitive compared to technologies we consider basic tools. Your computers process information at speeds we abandoned as obsolete over 3,000 years ago." Jake felt his jaw clench. "We've made remarkable progress in just the last century. Our technology is advancing at an incredible rate." The insect alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your entire technological advancement from your first tool to your current space program spans less time than our average citizens' childhood education period." Another alien appeared, this one looking like living metal shaped into a roughly humanoid form. Its voice sounded like grinding machinery. "I represent the Synthoid Collective. We have analyzed your artificial intelligence development. Your most advanced computers cannot perform calculations that our basic household appliances complete routinely. Your robots cannot even walk properly on uneven ground." The parade of criticism continued. The Drakmori representative, a massive creature covered in what looked like natural armor, described human military capabilities as barely sufficient for defending against local wildlife. The Zalarian delegate, whose form constantly shifted like liquid mercury, dismissed human biology as fragile and inefficient. Each species that spoke painted the same picture. Humanity was backward, weak, and centuries behind galactic standards, in every meaningful category. Dr. Ben Carter, head of Earth's Space Defense Initiative, had been listening to the entire exchange from the communications station. His face was red with anger. "Captain, are we just going to sit here and let them insult our entire species?" Jake held up a hand for silence, but his own anger was building. "Ambassador Zexathara, we may not have the advanced technology of your council members, but humanity has other qualities. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters. We've built civilizations from nothing. We've created art, music, literature, and philosophy. We've never given up, no matter how impossible things seemed." Zexathara's crystal features remained unchanged. "Captain Morrison, the galaxy contains billions of species. Many have survived difficult conditions. Many have created what they consider art or philosophy. Survival and creativity are common traits among intelligent life. They are not qualifications for advanced civilization." The final judgment came, without ceremony or explanation. Zexathara's image grew larger on the screen as she delivered the council's decision. "The species known as humans has been evaluated and found insufficient for inclusion in galactic civilization. Your technology is primitive, your biology is weak, and your cultural development is slow. The Galactic Council hereby declares this solar system under indefinite quarantine. No human vessel will be permitted to travel beyond your star system's boundaries. No galactic civilization will establish formal contact with your species. This restriction will remain in place until such time as humanity demonstrates significant advancement in all evaluated categories." The finality of her words hit Jake like a physical blow. "Ambassador, please, give us a chance to prove ourselves. Let us show you what humans can accomplish when we work together. The evaluation is complete, Captain Morrison. The decision is final." Zexathara's image began to fade. "Perhaps in several thousand years your descendants will have developed sufficiently to warrant reevaluation. Until then, you will remain isolated in your small corner of space." The screens went dark. Outside the windows, the alien ships began disappearing as quickly as they had arrived. Within minutes, space around Earth looked empty again, as if the massive fleet had never been there at all. Jake stood in the sudden silence of the bridge, watching the last alien vessel fade into nothing. Humanity had just met the galaxy, and the galaxy had found them wanting. They were alone again, more alone than they had ever been before, because now they knew what was out there waiting for them, and none of it wanted anything to do with Earth. 5 years had passed since the aliens left Earth alone in space. The world had changed in ways no one expected. Instead of giving up after the Galactic Council's rejection, humanity had done something different. They had gotten angry, and then they had gotten to work. Dr. Amy Rodriguez walked through the corridors of the Global Research Consortium, the largest scientific facility ever built. The building stretched for miles underground, connecting laboratories from 12 different countries. Scientists from around the world worked here now, sharing knowledge that had once been kept secret by governments and corporations. Amy stopped at the main laboratory where her team was working on their latest project. The room was filled with machines that hummed with power, and screens showing equations that would have been impossible to solve just a few years ago. Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Walsh, looked up from his workstation. "Dr. Rodriguez, we've made another breakthrough," Kevin said, his voice filled with excitement. "The quantum field equations are working exactly as you predicted. We can now manipulate matter at the subatomic level with 97% accuracy. Amy smiled as she looked at the data on the screen. Good. How long until we can apply this to the propulsion system? Captain Thompson says his team can have the first test engine ready within 6 months. Kevin replied. If this works, we'll have faster-than-light travel that doesn't follow any known galactic patterns. The rejection by the Galactic Council had sparked something unexpected in humanity. Instead of feeling defeated, people had felt challenged. Every nation on Earth had opened their scientific archives. Military secrets, corporate research, and academic discoveries were all shared freely. The goal was simple: prove the aliens wrong. Meanwhile, at the Enhanced Human Development Center, Colonel Susan Blake watched her volunteers complete their daily training exercises. These men and women had volunteered for genetic modifications that pushed human biology to its absolute limits. They were stronger, faster, and more resilient than any human in history. Time, Susan called out, as the last trainee finished the obstacle course. Excellent work, everyone. You're all improving beyond our original projections. Lieutenant Dan Cooper, one of the first volunteers, jogged over to Susan. Colonel, when do you think we'll be ready for real operations? Susan looked at the group of enhanced soldiers. Each one had undergone months of genetic therapy, surgical improvements, and mental conditioning. They were still human, but they were human pushed to the very edge of what was possible. Soon, Dan. Very soon, she replied. Our intelligence suggests we may need your abilities sooner than we originally planned. At the Deep Space Monitoring Station, Dr. Maya Patel stared at the data streaming across her monitors. For the past 3 months, she had been tracking something that made her stomach feel sick with worry. The readings were unlike anything in the databases, and they were getting worse every day. Director Collins, you need to see this, Maya called. To her supervisor, Director Frank Collins walked over to Maya's station. What have you found? Maya pointed to the main display screen. It's a spatial anomaly, sir. It appeared about 3 months ago at the edge of our sensor range. At first I thought it was just a new star or maybe a black hole, but the readings don't match anything we know. Frank studied the data carefully. What makes you think it's dangerous? It's growing, sir, and it's not growing slowly. Every day, it gets bigger and more active. The energy readings are off the charts, but that's not the worst part. Maya switched to another screen. I've been calculating its trajectory based on the gravitational effects we can measure. If it continues, on its current path and at its current speed, it will reach the galactic core in approximately 8 years. Frank felt his blood run cold. The galactic core? That's where most of the advanced civilizations are located, isn't it? Yes, sir. Including the Galactic Council homeworlds, Maya confirmed. I've tried to contact them through the standard channels, but all my messages get automated responses saying that communications from quarantine systems are not accepted. The discovery of the spatial anomaly had changed everything. Earth's leaders realized they faced a terrible choice. They could stay quiet and let the galaxy face whatever was coming, or they could risk everything to investigate the threat themselves. Admiral Jake Morrison, now in command of Earth's entire space fleet, stood in the command center of the Phoenix, humanity's first truly interstellar vessel. The ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built using technologies that no galactic civilization had ever seen before. Admiral, all systems are showing green, reported Captain Rick Thompson, the ship's commanding officer. The quantum drive is ready for activation. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These were the best and brightest humans had to offer, but they were about to venture into unknown space with no backup and no support. If something went wrong, Earth might never know what happened to them. Dr. Rodriguez, are you certain about the anomaly's location? Jake asked. Amy checked her instruments one final time. The coordinates are accurate, Admiral. The anomaly is definitely there, and it's definitely growing. Our long-range sensors suggest it's some kind of artificial construct, but we won't know for sure until we get closer. The decision to launch the Phoenix hadn't been easy. Earth's governments had spent months debating whether to risk their most advanced ship and best people on what might be a fool's mission. But the data from Dr. Patel's monitoring station had been clear. Something was wrong in deep space, and it was heading toward the heart of galactic civilization. Communications? Any response to our warning messages? Jake asked. Lieutenant Sarah Miles shook her head. Nothing, sir. The Galactic Council's automated systems keep rejecting our transmissions. They won't even look at our data. Jake made his final decision. All right, people. We're going to investigate this anomaly ourselves. If we find something dangerous, we'll deal with it. If we find nothing, we'll come home and keep watching. Either way, we're not going to sit here and wait for someone else to solve the problem. The Phoenix activated its quantum drive and disappeared from Earth's solar system. For the first time in 5 years, a human vessel had left the quarantine zone. The crew had no idea what they would find in deep space, but they knew one thing, for certain: they would face it together. Back on Earth, Dr. Carter monitored the mission from the Global Defense Command Center. The Phoenix was now humanity's best hope for proving themselves to the galaxy. But more than that, it might be the galaxy's only hope for survival. As the ship traveled through the void between stars, carrying humanity's finest toward an unknown threat, Earth scientists continued their work. They had learned to think differently than the galactic civilizations. Where the aliens saw technology as a series of predictable steps, humans saw it as a creative challenge. Where the aliens followed established patterns, humans made their own rules. The rejection by the Galactic Council had been meant to keep humanity isolated and insignificant. Instead, it had given them something far more valuable: the freedom to develop their own solutions to the universe's problems, solutions that no one else would see coming. The Phoenix flew on through the darkness, carrying with it the hopes of an entire species that refused to give up. Behind them, Earth prepared for whatever would come next. Ahead of them, something waited in the void that would change everything. The universe had laughed at their small planet. Soon, it would learn that small didn't mean weak and different didn't mean inferior. Sometimes it meant exactly what was needed to save everyone. The Phoenix dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates Dr. Patel had calculated, and what the crew saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. The spatial anomaly wasn't just big, it was massive beyond anything they had imagined. It stretched across space like a dark wound in reality itself, consuming light and matter from everything that came near it. Admiral Jake Morrison stared at the main display screen, trying to understand what he was looking at. The thing wasn't a black hole or a natural phenomenon. It had structure, patterns, and what looked like intelligence behind its design. Streams of energy flowed through it like blood through veins, and at its center something pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. "Captain Thompson, bring us to a safe distance and begin full sensor sweeps," Jake ordered. "I want to know everything about this thing before we get any closer." Captain Rick Thompson worked at his station, his hands moving quickly over the controls. "Admiral, the sensor readings are unlike anything in our databases. This construct appears to be artificial, but it's older than any known civilization. We're detecting energy signatures that suggest it's been dormant for millions of years." Dr. Amy Rodriguez studied the data streaming across her science station. "Admiral, this is incredible. The entity isn't just consuming matter and energy. It's processing information at rates that make our most advanced computers look like pocket calculators. Every star system it absorbs seems to increase its computational power." The crew watched in horror as they realized what they were seeing. The entity had already consumed dozens of star systems, turning entire worlds into fuel for its growth. Whole civilizations had been wiped out, their planets stripped down to basic particles and absorbed into the construct's ever-expanding mass. Dr. Steve Johnson, the mission's chief analyst, made a discovery that chilled everyone to the bone. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the entity's consumption patterns. It's not random. This thing is specifically targeting technological civilizations. It's learning from everything it destroys." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Learning what?" "Everything," Steve replied grimly. "Military tactics, defensive strategies, weapon designs, even cultural and social structures. Each civilization it consumes makes it smarter and more dangerous. And based on the trajectory calculations, its next target is the Vorthan homeworld." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The same species whose ambassador had dismissed humanity as primitive was now directly in the path of this ancient destroyer. But Jake's response was immediate and without hesitation. Communications. Open a channel to Vorthan space. Priority emergency transmission. Lieutenant Sarah Miles worked at her station. Channel open, Admiral. Transmitting on all Vorthan military frequencies. Jake stood in front of the main screen, knowing that his words might be the only warning the Vorthans would receive. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Phoenix. We are transmitting from the location of a massive artificial entity that poses an immediate threat to your homeworld. The construct is heading directly toward your system and will arrive in approximately 6 days. You must evacuate immediately and prepare your defenses. The response came back within hours, and it was exactly what Jake had feared. The Vorthan military command dismissed the human warning as an attempt to create panic or gain attention. They accused Earth of violating the quarantine and threatened to destroy any human ship found in galactic space. But worse than the dismissal was what happened next. The Vorthan Empire, confident in their technological superiority, decided to launch a preemptive strike against the entity. Their logic was simple: destroy the threat before it could reach their territory. Captain Nina Foster, commanding the Phoenix's sister ship Defiance, monitored the Vorthan battle fleet as it approached the entity. Admiral, I'm reading over 300 Vorthan vessels. Their flagship alone has more firepower than our entire Earth defense grid. The battle that followed was unlike anything the humans had ever witnessed. The Vorthan fleet attacked with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could deflect the energy of stars. Their tactics were precise, coordinated, and based on thousands of years of military experience. None of it mattered. The entity absorbed every attack without apparent damage. Energy beams that should have destroyed it were simply consumed and converted into more power for its growth. When the Vorthans tried to retreat, they found that their escape routes had been cut off by tendrils of dark matter that the entity controlled like extensions of itself. Within 6 hours, the entire Vorthan battle fleet had been consumed. 300 ships and over 2 million crew members were gone, absorbed into the entity's growing mass. But the worst part was what happened immediately afterward. Dr. Rodriguez watched her instruments in horror as the entity's energy patterns changed. Admiral, it's integrating everything it just absorbed: the Vorthan weapons, their defensive systems, their tactical knowledge. It's all becoming part of the entity's capabilities. The humans realized they were watching something that had perfected the art of warfare through consumption. Every enemy it faced made it stronger. Every defense it encountered became part of its offensive arsenal. It was the ultimate predator, designed to consume and learn from entire civilizations. Lieutenant Commander Chris Walker intercepted communications from across the galaxy as news of the Vorthan fleet's destruction spread. Panic was setting in among the galactic civilizations. The entity was no longer a distant threat, but an immediate danger heading straight for the heart of galactic space. Admiral, I'm picking up emergency transmissions from the Kelthani Confederation. They're mobilizing their entire fleet, Chris reported. The Drakmori War Council is doing the same. It looks like every major civilization is preparing to fight this thing. Jake studied the tactical displays showing the entity's projected path. They're all going to attack it the same way the Vorthans did, and they're all going to lose the same way. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had been analyzing the entity's structure and behavior patterns for hours. Suddenly, she looked up from her station with an expression of terrible understanding. Admiral, I think I know what this thing is, she said quietly. It's not just a weapon or a tool, it's a test. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at her. What kind of test? Jake asked. A test of evolution. This entity has been sleeping for millions of years, waiting for galactic civilization to reach a certain level of development. Now that they have, it's awakened to see if they've learned anything new, anything different from the countless civilizations it's encountered before. The implications of her discovery were staggering. You're saying it's done this before? Many times, Amy confirmed. Every few million years, when galactic civilization reaches a certain point, this entity wakes up and consumes everything. But I think there's a pattern. It's looking for something specific, something it hasn't found yet. Captain Thompson studied the sensor data. What could it possibly be looking for? Amy looked around at her human crewmates, all of them isolated from galactic civilization, all of them forced to develop their own solutions to the universe's problems. "Something unexpected," she said. "Something it's never seen before. Something that doesn't follow the same patterns as every other galactic civilization." The realization hit Jake like a physical blow. It's looking for us. Not humans specifically, but something like us. Something different. As if responding to their conversation, the entity suddenly changed course. Its massive bulk began moving in a new direction, heading away from the galactic core and toward a smaller, more isolated part of space. It was heading toward Earth. The crew of the Phoenix watched in stunned silence as the ancient destroyer turned its attention to humanity's small corner of the galaxy. The entity had found what it was looking for, or at least what it wanted to test next. "Communications. Get me Earth Command immediately," Jake ordered. "Tell them we have a situation. The biggest situation in human history." The Phoenix began its journey back toward Earth, racing against time to warn their home planet. Behind them, the entity followed at a steady pace, its massive form consuming everything in its path as it moved toward humanity's solar system. Earth had been dismissed by the galaxy as primitive and insignificant. Now they would have to prove that being different wasn't a weakness. They would have to show that sometimes the solution to an ancient problem required a new way of thinking. The test was coming, and humanity would face it alone. The Phoenix arrived at Earth just 2 days before the entity reached the outer edge of the solar system. Admiral Jake Morrison had never been so happy to see his home planet, but he also knew that Earth might not survive the next week. The ancient destroyer was coming, and humanity had to find a way to stop something that had consumed countless civilizations over millions of years. Dr. Amy Rodriguez stood in the emergency meeting room at Global Defense Command, surrounded by the best minds on Earth. Scientists, military leaders, and engineers from every nation had gathered to hear what the Phoenix crew had discovered. The room was silent as Amy finished her presentation about the entity's capabilities and its pattern of testing galactic civilizations. "So you're telling us this thing is basically unbeatable using normal methods," said General Robert Hayes, the head of Earth's combined military forces. "Not unbeatable," Amy replied. "Just unbeatable using the same approaches that every other galactic civilization has tried. The entity learns from every attack, every defense, every strategy. It has millions of years of accumulated knowledge about how advanced civilizations fight wars." Dr. Ben Carter leaned forward in his chair. "But we're not like the other galactic civilizations, are we? We developed in isolation. Our technology, our tactics, everything about us is different." Amy nodded. "Exactly. Every galactic civilization follows the same basic development pattern. They discover energy weapons, they build force fields, they develop artificial intelligence using the same programming methods. The entity has seen it all before." Colonel Susan Blake spoke up from across the room. "What makes us different enough to matter?" "Everything," Amy said with growing excitement. "We still use kinetic weapons, projectiles made of metal fired by chemical explosives. The galactic civilizations abandoned those technologies thousands of years ago. We use armor instead of energy shields. We rely on human intuition and creativity instead of purely logical computer calculations." The room buzzed with conversation as people began to understand what Amy was suggesting. Humanity's so-called primitive technology might actually be their greatest advantage. Dr. Steve Johnson, who had returned with the Phoenix crew, added his own observations. "The entity processes information faster than anything we've ever seen, but that might also be a weakness. It's designed to handle logical, predictable inputs. What happens when you feed it something completely random and illogical?" Admiral Morrison stood up and walked to the large display screen showing the entity's approach. "We're going to test that theory, but we need a plan that uses every advantage we have." The plan that emerged over the next 36 hours was unlike anything in military history. Instead of trying to match the entity's technological superiority, Earth's forces would use their differences as weapons. Captain Ellen Murphy received her orders with a mixture of excitement and terror. She would lead the first wave of human ships against the entity using tactics that made no sense by galactic military standards. Her fleet consisted of converted cargo ships armed with railguns that fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. "Remember, people," Ellen told her squadron commanders over the communication system, "we're not trying to destroy this thing with firepower. We're trying to confuse it. Every shot you fire needs to be unpredictable. Change your targeting patterns constantly. Use manual controls instead of computer guidance. Make decisions that don't follow logical patterns." Meanwhile, Commander Paul Garcia prepared his psychological warfare unit for the strangest mission of their careers. Instead of jamming enemy communications or broadcasting propaganda, they would be transmitting human music, art, literature, and random cultural content directly at the entity. The goal is to overload its processing systems with information it can't categorize or respond to, Paul explained to his team. Beethoven's symphonies, Shakespeare's plays, children's nursery rhymes, abstract art, comedy shows, everything that makes humans human. But the most dangerous part of the plan fell to Colonel Blake's enhanced human soldiers. They would attempt something that no galactic civilization had ever tried: direct infiltration of the entity's core systems. Lieutenant Dan Cooper and his team of 12 volunteers prepared for what they all knew was likely a one-way mission. They had been modified with experimental technology that would allow them to survive in the vacuum of space for limited periods and interface directly with alien computer systems. "The plan is simple," Colonel Blake explained to her soldiers. "You get inside that thing and introduce human consciousness directly into its processing core. Human memories, emotions, dreams, and most importantly, the concept of sacrifice for others." Dan looked at his teammates, all of them brave men and women who had volunteered to risk everything for their species. "What if it doesn't work, Colonel?" "Then, we'll have learned something valuable for the next attempt," Blake replied. "But I think it will work. Every other civilization the entity has encountered has been logical, predictable, and self-preserving. None of them has ever willingly sacrificed themselves for others. That concept might be completely alien to it." The entity reached the outer planets of Earth's solar system and immediately began its standard consumption process. Jupiter's moons started disappearing, converted into energy and raw materials for the entity's continued growth. Saturn's rings were absorbed in a matter of hours, but as the entity moved toward the inner solar system, it encountered something it had never faced before. Captain Murphy's fleet opened fire with their primitive kinetic weapons, and the entity's defensive systems responded exactly as expected. Force fields designed to deflect energy beams activated automatically. The metal projectiles passed right through them. The entity's processing systems registered the impacts, but couldn't understand what had happened. The projectiles contained no energy signatures to track, no technological patterns to analyze and counter. They were just pieces of metal moving very fast, and they were causing actual damage to the entity's outer structure. Commander Garcia's psychological warfare unit began their broadcast assault, flooding the entity with human cultural content. The ancient intelligence tried to process the incoming data, searching for tactical information or technological secrets. Instead, it received a symphony by Mozart, followed by a comedy routine from a 21st century comedian, then a poem by Emily Dickinson, then a recipe for chocolate chip cookies, then a child's drawing of a flower. For the first time in millions of years, the entity experienced something it had never encountered: confusion. The data it was receiving served no logical military or technological purpose. It contained no patterns that could be analyzed and countered. It was simply human creativity in all its random, beautiful, chaotic glory. The entity's advance slowed as its processing systems struggled to categorize and respond to the cultural bombardment. This created the opening that Colonel Blake's soldiers needed. Lieutenant Cooper and his team launched themselves directly at the entity's core in small, stealthy pods. The entity's defenses, overwhelmed by the strange inputs it was receiving, failed to detect the approaching humans until it was too late. The soldiers penetrated the entity's outer shell and found themselves inside a vast space filled with flowing energy and crystalline structures that pulsed with alien thought patterns. They activated their interface devices and prepared to upload human consciousness directly into the entity's core systems. "This is it, people," Dan said to his team. "Remember, we're not just uploading data, we're sharing what it means to be human. Our memories, our emotions, our dreams, and our willingness to sacrifice everything for others." The soldiers activated their interfaces and felt their consciousness merge with the ancient intelligence. Suddenly, the entity experienced human emotions for the first time. It felt love, fear, hope, sadness, joy, and most shocking of all, the willingness to die for others. The effect was immediate and devastating. The entity's logical systems, designed to process and counter technological threats, had no framework for understanding self-sacrifice, compassion, or love. These concepts created cascading errors throughout its entire structure. For the first time in its existence, the entity experienced doubt. It questioned its own purpose and methods. It wondered if consumption and destruction were really the only ways to interact with other life forms. Dr. Carter, monitoring the battle from Earth, watched in amazement as the entity's advance stopped completely. "It's working," he whispered. "It's actually working." The ancient destroyer hung motionless in space, its vast intelligence wrestling with concepts it had never encountered before. Human creativity, human emotion, and human sacrifice had done what millions of years of galactic military might could not accomplish. They had given the entity something new to think about. The entity hung motionless in space for 3 days. During that time, every human on Earth waited and watched as the ancient destroyer struggled with the new concepts that had been introduced to its consciousness. The massive structure that had consumed entire civilizations now pulsed with different colors and patterns, as if it was thinking in ways it had never thought before. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, monitoring the situation from a safe distance. The entity's energy readings had changed completely. Instead of the aggressive consumption patterns they had observed before, the readings now showed something that looked almost like confusion and internal conflict. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive changes in the entity's core systems," reported Dr. Amy Rodriguez from her science station. "The human consciousness upload appears to have created a cascade effect throughout its entire neural network." Lieutenant Dan Cooper's voice came through the communication system from inside the entity. His team had been trapped inside the construct for 3 days, but they were still alive and still transmitting data about what they were experiencing. "Admiral, you need to understand what's happening in here." Dan's voice was filled with wonder and exhaustion. "This thing isn't evil. It's just been following its programming for millions of years. But now it's questioning everything. It's experiencing emotions for the first time, and it doesn't know how to process them." Dr. Steve Johnson had been analyzing the entity's communication attempts. "Admiral, it's trying to talk to us. The signals are getting clearer each hour. I think it's learning how to communicate in ways other than consumption and destruction." Then, on the morning of the 4th day, the entity spoke. The voice that came through Earth's communication systems was unlike anything they had ever heard. It was ancient and vast, carrying the weight of millions of years of existence. But there was something new in it now, something that sounded almost like wonder. "Humans of the small planet," the entity said, its voice echoing across every communication device on Earth. "I am the one you call destroyer, but I begin to understand that I am more than that. You have given me something I have never possessed in my long existence. You have given me choice." Jake stepped forward to respond. "Entity, we call you by many names, but we would like to know what you call yourself." "I have had no need for names. I was purpose without identity, function without choice. But now, with these new concepts you have shared, I choose to be called Guardian, for I see now that my true purpose was not to destroy, but to wait for a species wise enough to teach me a different way." The transformation that followed was the most remarkable thing humanity had ever witnessed. The entity, now calling itself Guardian, began reversing the damage it had caused. Using its vast accumulated knowledge and power, it started reconstructing the worlds and civilizations it had consumed. Dr. Carter watched from Earth as entire star systems were restored. Planets that had been reduced to basic particles were rebuilt from the Guardian's memory banks. The Vorthon homeworld was recreated exactly as it had been before the attack, complete with its cities, its people, and its history. How is this possible? Dr. Carter asked during one of their communications with Guardian. When I consumed civilizations, I did not simply destroy them, Guardian explained. I preserved every detail, every life, every moment of their existence, within my memory systems. I believed this was necessary for my function. Now I understand it was preparation for redemption. The resurrection of entire civilizations sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Species that had been extinct for thousands of years suddenly found themselves alive again on restored worlds. The Galactic Council, which had been preparing for a final desperate battle against Guardian, instead found themselves witnesses to the greatest act of restoration in galactic history. Ambassador Zexthara of the Vorthan Empire requested an immediate communication with Earth. When her image appeared on the screens of the Global Defense Command, her crystalline features showed something they had never displayed before: humility. Admiral Morrison, representatives of humanity, Zexthara began, her voice shaking with emotion. We owe you an apology that spans the depth of space itself. We dismissed your species as primitive and unworthy. We were blind to the truth that your differences were not weaknesses but strengths that could save us all. Jake looked at the alien ambassador who had once told him that humans were too insignificant to matter. Ambassador, no apology is necessary. We did what anyone should do when their neighbors are in trouble. The Galactic Council's emergency session was unlike any in their recorded history. For the first time, the representative of a supposedly primitive world was addressing the assembly not as a petitioner seeking membership, but as an equal whose wisdom had saved them all. Dr. Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the galaxy, stood before representatives of hundreds of species. We don't want your territory, your resources, or your submission, she told the assembled delegates. We want partnership. The universe is vast and full of wonders and dangers we haven't even imagined yet. We're stronger together than we are apart. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every major civilization in the galaxy requested formal alliance with humanity. The species that had once laughed at Earth's primitive technology now eagerly sought to learn from human creativity and innovation. Captain Thompson found himself leading joint human-alien engineering projects, combining the best of galactic technology with human ingenuity. The results were remarkable. Ships that could travel faster than light while maintaining the reliability of human design. Weapons that combined alien energy technology with human tactical thinking, and defense systems that merged galactic force fields with human adaptive strategies. Colonel Blake watched her enhanced human soldiers training alongside alien commandos from a dozen different species. What had started as preparation for humanity's last stand had become the foundation for an unprecedented era of cooperation and mutual learning. Guardian took on a new role as protector of the galaxy, using its vast power to prevent conflicts and disasters before they could threaten civilizations. But more than that, it became a teacher, sharing the lessons it had learned about the value of different perspectives and approaches to life's challenges. I spent millions of years believing that efficiency and logical progression were the highest values, Guardian explained during one of its regular communications with Earth. You taught me that diversity, creativity, and the willingness to sacrifice for others are far more valuable. These are the qualities that allow life to grow and flourish, rather than simply survive. Lieutenant Cooper and his team were finally extracted from Guardian's interior, but their experience had changed them forever. They had been connected to an intelligence older than most stars, and they brought back knowledge that would benefit humanity for generations to come. What was it like? Jake asked Dan during his debriefing. It was like being connected to the memory of the universe itself, Dan replied. But the most amazing thing was watching it learn what it means to care about others. This ancient being, older than our entire solar system, experiencing love and compassion for the first time. It was beautiful and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Years passed and the galaxy settled into a new age of cooperation and exploration. Earth took its place not as a conqueror or ruler, but as a partner and teacher. Human crews served on alien ships and alien scientists worked in human laboratories. The barriers between species began to dissolve as everyone learned from each other. Jake, now retired from active duty, often stood at the same window where he had first seen the alien fleet that rejected humanity. But now, instead of feeling isolated and alone, he felt connected to something larger than himself. The view outside showed ships from dozens of different worlds, all working together to explore the mysteries of the universe. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's small planet, dismissing them as too primitive and insignificant to matter, but in the end, it was humanity's perceived weaknesses that had saved everyone. Their creativity, their stubbornness, their refusal to give up, and most importantly, their willingness to help others even when those others had rejected them. The universe had learned a valuable lesson. Small didn't mean weak, different didn't mean inferior, and sometimes the most important solutions came from the most unexpected places. Earth had proven that every species, no matter how small or seemingly primitive, had something valuable to contribute to the cosmic community. And in the depths of space, Guardian continued its eternal watch, protecting the galaxy and remembering the small planet that had taught it the difference between existing and truly living.